and welcome to this webinar for applicants to the NORPART Call for Applications 2021. Diku is pleased to issue this call for new 5-year projects. We are happy to see that there is a large interest for the call, and hopefully this will result in many good applications and long-term partnerships to be established in the years to come. My name is Sissel Holmberg. With me today, I have my good colleagues in the NORPART team, Ingvild Hope, Hilde Kjøstvedt, Lene Kristin Hansen, and Camilla Krebs-Stettler. Together, we will guide you through this webinar presentation and provide you with essential information about the call and important things to keep in mind when you are developing an application. The webinar is divided in 3 parts. In part 1, you will receive information on the aim and objectives of NORPART, new elements in the program period 2022 to 26, information about student mobility, partnerships, the NORPART result framework, budget, and selection criteria. In part 2, we will give you tips on project and application development. In part 3, we are pleased to have with us a representative from the South African Ministry of Higher Education and Training, Mr. Alfred Makato from the Department of University Institutional Funding. He will present opportunities for partnerships with a selected number of South African higher education institutions. You are invited to ask questions in the Q&A section at the bottom of the webinar window during the presentation, and we will try to answer as many as possible during the presentations. There will also be time for more questions after each part of the webinar. The webinar will be recorded and later made available on the NORPART website. We will also try to publish the Q&As at our webpage shortly after the webinar. And you can, of course, always contact the NORPART team after the webinar for more questions and clarifications. NORPART was developed in 2016 to meet new priorities and opportunities in Norwegian higher education cooperation with countries in the Global South. NORPART is funded through the Ministry of Education and Research and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and is administered by Diku. The program is rather unique in an international South-North partnerships collaboration context in the sense that it addresses both Norwegian higher education policy and development policy. There have been 2 previous calls for applications in 2016 and 2018, and a total of 46 projects are funded for the period 2017 to 2023. NORPART partner countries outside Norway consist of 40 different countries in Africa, Asia, and Latin America. The current project portfolio is represented in all 3 continents. There is a concentration of NORPART projects in East Africa, with Ethiopia, Tanzania, and Uganda as the top 3 countries. Nepal, Sri Lanka, and Vietnam are partner countries with the most project partners in Asia. The NORPART projects are diverse with regard to academic disciplines. The overall aim of NORPART is to contribute towards enhancing the quality of higher education in Norway and the partner countries in the Global South through academic cooperation and mutual student mobility. To reach this overall aim, the program shall fulfill 4 objectives: strengthen partnerships for education and research between partner countries in the Global South and Norway, increased quality and internationalization of academic programs at participating institutions, increased mobility of students from countries in the Global South to Norway, including mobility in connection with work placements, increased mobility of students from Norway to countries in the Global South, including mobility in connection with work placements. NORPART acknowledge that global challenges require global cooperation. The relevance and quality of higher education will improve in Norway and in the partner countries in the Global South as a result of international cooperation. The UN's Agenda 2030 emphasizes that high-quality education is an essential component for achieving the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. NORPART aims to contribute to all aspects of the 2030 Agenda. However, the program is particularly relevant to SDG 4, ensuring inclusive and equitable quality education and promote lifelong learning and opportunities for all. SDG 5, achieving gender equality and empower all women and girls. And SDG 17, revitalizing the Global Partnership for Sustainable Development. New elements in the program from 2022 to 26 are the following. A program document is developed based on Diku's experiences from the two previous calls for applications, and partly on recommendations from the midterm evaluation of NORPART in 2020, conducted by Ideas to Evidence. The impact of the COVID-19 pandemic has profoundly affected all aspects of international academic collaboration, including the operation of NORPART projects. On the positive side, the pandemic has triggered a development of new and creative approaches to online teaching and learning, as well as a more strategic use of local ICT resources. Digitalization of education can contribute to enhance the quality and relevance of education in Norway and the partner countries. NORPART therefore strongly encourage the development of online learning, education, and training as part of the collaboration. Strategic use of open and flexible learning platforms, virtual and blended mobility, and open educational resources may improve access to higher education and facilitate sharing of project results and outputs. Project funding is increased from 5 million to maximum 6 million for a 5-year project period. And a new and hopefully more flexible budget model is introduced. And under this call, project can also apply for full degree master scholarships in Norway for students from partner institutions in the South. South Africa is included on the list of eligible NORPART countries for partnerships with selected South African higher education institutions. A new model for evaluation of applications is introduced under this call, and each application will be assessed by 3 evaluators representing the Global South and the Global North. In line with the Norwegian government's higher education and development policy, increased mutual student mobility continued to be a core element in NORPART, with the emphasis on mobility of students from partner countries in the Global South to Norway. The belief is that internationally mobile students will prosper academically and gain international understanding, intercultural skills, and access to international networks. They will also bring new perspectives back to their home institution and thereby contribute to internationalization at home. NORPART focuses on master's and PhD students. Student mobility at bachelor level cannot be funded by the program. Mobility may include physical, virtual, as well as blended mobility. Support is given to student mobility and from Norway of 3 to 12 months durations at master level and 3 to 18 months at PhD level. Stays of less than 3 months in relation to other project activities may also be covered. All projects must include student mobility with a substantial number of mobile students from partner countries to Norway for stays of minimum 3 months duration. All projects must include plans and strategies for recruitment of Norwegian students for mobility stays at partner institutions in the South, and measures for how their experience and knowledge will be shared with non-mobile students upon return to Norway. As previously mentioned, NORPART supports a limited number of full degree master scholarships in Norway for students from the Global South. These scholarships should be earmarked for students without a formal master's degree and students from underrepresented or marginalized groups. The scholarships can also be offered to staff members at partner institutions in the Global South who will who needs or wants to improve their academic credentials. It is required that the selected candidates for these scholarships are documented students or staff at the partner institutions. Strengthened partnerships in education and research is an equally central element in NORPART as mutual student mobility. And NORPART aims to be a flexible tool for joint and mutually beneficial academic cooperation with a long-term perspective. On this note, NORPART recognizes North-South partnerships as an important means to reaching the goal set. Partnerships may include higher education institutions, public or private enterprises, research institutes, non-governmental organizations, and NGOs or other organizations in Norway or in the NORPART partner countries. In addition to the Norwegian applicant institutions, at least one partner must be an accredited higher education institution in a NORPART partner country. Through institutional partnerships and collaboration with non-academic organizations, higher education institutions in Norway and the Global South can gain complementary expertise and knowledge, as well as alternative ways of providing education. This can enhance both the relevance and the quality of the education provided. Partnerships across sectors and disciplines are also key elements for the achievement of sustainable ripple effects of project results beyond the scope of the partnerships and for reaching the society at large. The partner institutions' strategies, priorities, and needs must inform the projects. The partnership model therefore implies institutional ownership and endorsement of a NORPART project. The NORPART result framework defines the linkage between aim and objectives of the resources invested, as well as the expected outputs, outcomes, and overall impact of the program. The result framework gives suggestions of project activities, results, outputs, outcomes, and impact that may contribute to achieving the objectives of the program. Applicants should, however, design the project in the way they consider best suited to achieve the project goals and the program objectives. And applicants are requested to describe the expected results and indicators of progress of the project as detailed as possible. And projects may include all fields of education and involve multiple fields and disciplines. And to increase projects' contributions to the aim and objectives of NORPART, the projects are expected to disseminate project results, promising practices, experiences, and lessons learned both within and outside the institutions involved in the project. And now I will give the virtual floor to Lene Kristin Hansen, and she will give you more information about the NORPART budget guidelines.
Thank you, Susanne. Yeah, so if you are familiar with this program, you have probably been accustomed to a different setup, budget setup previously. So this is quite new. So I'm just going to start with showing you how it will look like in Espresso when you go and apply. As you can see, there are different budget posts here. So I just wanted to show you that this is how it will look like, and we're going to walk you through these budget posts. Which is something that's also new, is this funding plan. This is not mandatory for you to fill in, but we highly recommend it, as it will give us a better understanding of your total project support, and also if you plan on having a substantial amount of in-kind, this will also be visible to us, so that you can illustrate the amount of funding and in-kind that the project is planning to have. So yeah, we can move on to the budget post, starting off with the student scholarship. Thank you. And so this is the same rules as has been applied before. Still, you can apply for student scholarship if you plan on having student mobility exceeding 4 weeks, both going out of Norway and to Norway. It's still the rate set by the Research Council of Norway for PhD students and the Norwegian State Educational Loan Fund, Lånekassen, for the master students. And if students going from Norway, they may also apply for these costs that if they are not covered by the State Educational Loan Fund. And like Sissa mentioned, we also have this full degree scholarship. And here you can apply for up to 350,000 for each student for 2 years. Now these funds have to cover scholarship, travel costs, visa and insurance, but they all fall under the scholarship posts. So they all behave like a scholarship. You can also get travel and accommodation costs for staff covered, as long as they are related for the project activities. The same goes for the students. They can have so this is students under 4 weeks, they can have travel and accommodation covered, as well as visa and insurance costs. If they are not covered by the State Educational Loan Fund or other funding sources. And so this is one of the newer things, is this there is no cap on the salary or the direct and indirect costs. However, we have to emphasize that you have to clearly indicate in the application why these costs are necessary for the implementation of the project. So the direct cost is the salary costs for the project staff working directly on the project. So they have to be directly associated or directly linked to the project in order to get salary costs. And these resources may have been set aside especially for the implementation of the activities for the projects. These can be project managers or administration, as well as project participants. So how you can also get salary costs or indirect costs, direct costs for your partners, but this has to be clearly specified in the application how you're going to divide this. But you can divide it between partners however you like, but you have to make it clear in the application how you plan to do this. And the partners they also have to be directly linked to the project. These indirect costs are the costs that the encompass use of general resources within the institution that the project benefits from. So this can be, you know, the internet, the office space, whatever it might be. But this also needs to be clarified in the application, how much indirect cost is necessary in order to follow out the activities. And going over to procurement of services. These are, so the previous slide. Thank you. So the costs relating to procurement of services necessary for the project, meaning that if you need to hire some external services in order to follow through your project activities, then it needs to be specified as well, and you need to be able to link those costs directly to an invoice if this is a cost outside of your own institution. And regarding digital solutions, that there might be we see now that might be quite a lot of cost relating to digital services, licenses or systems. And you can apply for this, but we just want to say that applicants that have investigated already existing functioning programs on either the institution, with cheaper licenses, that will be viewed favorably. We can move on to the next one. Thank you. And so equipment. Normally, this is not something that we allow on the project, but if you have certain costs related to purchase of equipment, if it's necessary for the execution of the project, you can apply for it. Again, then you need to specify why this is necessary. We cannot apply, or you will not get funded for cost relating to purchase of equipment that will be viewed as an investment. When we say investment, then the simplest way to kind of define it is equipment that is not fully depreciated by the end of the project period. And then other operating expenses. So this is kind of just all of the other costs that's necessary for the implementation of the activities in the projects or the execution of the project. And these are all costs relating to the dissemination, which is important, seminars or webinars, whatever it might be, the digitalization of activities or other material and expenses. So if they don't fit under any of the other budget posts, you can just place them under here. I showed you the funding plan earlier. And like I said before, it just shows us the total funding or own contribution in kind of makes it visible. But if you don't have any other funding or sources, you can just write that in a comment and you don't have to fill it in. But again, I just want to emphasize that if you know that it will be quite a substantial amount of in-kind, or if you get some own contribution showing that the project is somehow manifested in the institution, that will be something we would like to see. Just have to see that I haven't missed anything. I think that's all. All right. Thank you. And Camilla, is there any questions you would like me to answer right now, or should we wait till the end?
Yes, there's quite a few questions coming in. Let me see. There's one question about if there's a limited number of master scholarships one can apply per project, or if it can be decided by each project according to what the budget allows.
So there's no set limits to the master, no, so I'm not talking about the full degree scholarship here, but the normal master students, there's no cap on that. So you can apply for how many you think you'll be able to send them or to mobilize. But we also always look for the, if it's realistic. So if it's well planned, if it's well investigated before you apply, that's also something we look for. But yeah, again, there's no cap on it, and it's positive if you're able to send, you know, a larger amount of student mobility.
Yeah, and the budget for full degree master student, there is a limited budget in total, right? So that would
yeah,
that would pose a limitation on us on the total level.
Yes, yeah, maybe I don't know. I think you have to help me here, Camilla. Is the limit there set to?
Yeah, maybe Hilda, you want to comment?
Maybe on the full degree. I think you can apply for as many as you want, but you know it needs to be fairly distributed. So there will be a limit. But maybe Hilda can fill in.
Are we still talking about how many master student full degree scholarships each project can apply for?
Yes.
Yes. So, there isn't per se a limit, but we aim to distribute the scholarships quite evenly between the projects, which means that if we have 140 million Norwegian kroner to distribute between projects and they can apply for 6 million each, and then there is 30 million kroner to distribute for full degree scholarships, it won't be a lot of scholarships per project. Right now, we had a call for applications for full degree scholarships last year, where each ongoing NORPART project applied for and was awarded 1 to 2 full degree scholarships. And we don't expect all the NORPART projects to actually apply for full degree scholarships, so it might not be that all projects actually need them or want them, but there will be. We will, as far as possible, try to make the distribution even, and then that means that I don't think personally it will be possible for a project to get more than 5 full degree scholarships at the very maximum. Because let's be frank and honest about it, student mobility is supposed first and foremost to be about students' exchange and short-term mobility, not full degree scholarships. It's an addition to the program, and the scholarships are supposed to be used strategically to selected students and staff members, as was already said, and the mainstay of the student mobility should still be for exchange and not for full degree studies.
Yeah. Very well, thank you, Hilda, for clarifying. Maybe we'll have another question regarding scholarships. There's one question from Eirin Bakken. Will pure virtual mobility also be eligible for student scholarships?
Do you want me to answer that one as well?
I think Hilda, again, you think you should mobility.
Yeah, sure. Pure virtual mobile students, no, they will not be eligible for scholarships.
All right. Let's say we have one question about research expenses. Is it possible to plan a budget covering research expenses for master and PhD students? Hilda or Lena?
Yeah, I'm just thinking about the research expenses. It kind of all depends on what kind of research activities. So if it's field work, then it can be covered. But also it's kind of difficult, but maybe Hilda can again.
Well, it depends what research expenses you talk about, but it depends on how the project is organized. I mean, expenses to be used in PhD students are included. They can have scholarships. PhD student activities can be funded. So if those are research expenses, then yes, I see that there are a lot of questions coming in, and we cannot answer all of them here now because we're sort of running out of time. We have to keep to the time schedule as well. We'll try to keep answering them in writing, but I think now is the time to give the word to Ingvild and move on. And then we will, of course, try and answer as many questions as possible during the webinar, but we also will have to gather some of the questions and post them as frequently asked questions or a Q&A on our web pages after the webinar. So please be patient.
Okay. Am I muted now?
We can hear you.
Okay. After the application deadline on the 27th of May, we will start the evaluation process of all the incoming applications. And eligible applications will be assessed by 3 evaluators, as Sissel mentioned, appointed by Diku, representing both the Global South and the Global North. Applications will receive a grade on a scale from 1, that is poor, till 7, that is outstanding, for each of the 4 evaluation criteria. Applications will be ranked based on the average of the subgrades. Diku makes the final funding decision based on the ranking from the different teams. Applications that receive an average grade of less than 4 or less than 4 on one or more of the criteria will be rejected. Applications that receive an average grade or subgrades that exceed the minimum grant threshold, but for which there are not sufficient funds to offer a grant, will be placed on a waiting list, prioritized in accordance with the grading. We have some selection criteria, and eligible application will be assessed by these following 4 criteria. And I want you to please note that these correspond to the project description section in part 2 in the online Espresso application form. I will mention only the main criteria. There are a lot of small bullet points here that you can see in the call. I will only mention the main ones. So the criteria will be the first, the project's relevance to the overall aim and objectives of the program, the impact, the dissemination and sustainability of project results, the quality of partnerships, and last, the quality of the implementation plan. And if relevant, the quality of the plan for student recruitment and follow-up of full degree master students. After this process, Diku aims to give the applicants the final decision on the selection process in end September, start October 2021. So this was a little bit about the evaluation process. And now Hilda, my colleague, will take us through part 2 in this webinar.
Thank you, Ingvild. I'll just share a few tips on project application and development. So what we have gathered a few ideas on how to develop a successful project application for NORPART. We have previously received and read around 200 NORPART applications, so we've tried to gather as much experience as we can from those processes. The first thing that is important to point out is the importance of preparation. You need to read the relevant documents carefully, those being the program document, the call for application, and the budget guidelines. If you haven't read these documents carefully, you won't be able to hand in an application that is worthy of support. These documents outline the program's aims and objectives, and gives the details about rates to be used and eligibility criteria that the application needs to meet. So NORPART projects are partnership projects, and that means that the applicant institution in Norway and the partner institution or institutions in the partner country should be involved in developing the application together from the start. It is possible for up to 4 persons to have editor access to the application form in our online application portal at the same time, and this should hopefully make it easy for partners to work together. This brings me to the next point, which is that it's very, very important to start familiarizing yourself with the application form in Espresso. Application forms may be tricky, and even if we think Espresso is quite good, it's always a good idea to start to get an idea of what it looks like, how it operates, as soon as you can. Lene showed you a bit about what the budget part looks like, and I'll show you more in a bit. I'd also like to say that you need to keep the reader in mind when you write your application. Sometimes we say that application writing is a bit like storytelling, only it is important to remember that this story is not a mystery novel where the reader must hunt for clues. On the contrary, every effort should be made to help the reader understand what your project is trying to achieve and how you are going about to achieve it. And remember, you can always contact Diku with questions. Please don't wait until the application deadline approaches to ask them. The application form. This is what the start page of the application form for NORPART 2021 applications looks like. When you log on to Espresso, you will be taken to a page that shows all the programs that are open for application through Diku at any given point. One of these will say NORPART, and when you select this, you will be taken to this page that you can see now. This first start page is where you add editors and readers. And I'd just like to point out that you get more information on how to do this by clicking on the I in the blue circle where it says help. There are 4 main headings in the application form, and the first one is short but important. The project summary, which you will be asked to write here, will act as the public face of the project because it will, if the project is funded, be reprinted in Diku's online project database, and excerpts of the project summary may be used in our publications. Heading 2, project description, consists of the main part of the application form. This is where you're likely to spend most time writing your application. There are, as you can see, character limits to most of these text boxes, and these character limits must not be exceeded. You can keep track of the character limits in the lower right-hand corner of each text box. You can write directly into the text box, but it is also possible to write the text in a Word document and cut and paste it into the text box afterwards. The project description part is organized to match the 4 selection criteria that Ingvild talked about, namely relevance, 2.1, impact and sustainability, 2.2, partnership, and implementation. Impact and sustainability, yes, partnership and implementation. And under each of these subheadings, you will be asked to provide information that those who assess the application will measure against the selection criteria. Heading 3 consists of the budget that Lene has already showed you, and under heading 4 you'll be able to upload attachments. You may, of course, upload as many attachments as you like, but it is only the letters of commitment and the project coordinator's CV that will be taken into consideration when we assess the application. Please note that while the CV is mandatory, the letters of commitment are not, but the letters of commitment will form part of the assessment of the quality of the partnership. So we strongly recommend that you include them. Finally, submission. If something mandatory is missing from the application, Espresso will tell you and you won't be able to submit. You may submit the application well in advance of the application deadline. And then if you remember that you have missed something important and you would like to have it reopened, you can contact Diku and we can reopen it for you so you can add some information that you realize that you have missed. We recommend that you familiarize, as I said, familiarize yourself with Espresso. You can start writing as many applications in Espresso as possible. It's not, you can discard them, you can start a new one, as long as you remember to submit your final application by the deadline. And the deadline is final. There are important questions to consider when you start working on a project ID and begin to develop your application in cooperation with your project partners. Please keep the selection criteria in mind. Does my project meet the aim and objectives of NORPART? Are all the eligibility criteria met? If not, if you do not meet the eligibility criteria, the application will not be evaluated. How well does the project answer the selection criteria? And the budget will be assessed as part of the application, so consider whether the budget is reasonable and whether the budget items are well explained. So the previous two NORPART calls elicited around 200 applications. From assessing them, we have registered some issues that we think should be mentioned, and we have labeled them frequently observed weaknesses. While this list is not exhaustive, these are some of the more obvious ones. Poor applications tend to have unclear narratives, where the project description is not detailed and specific enough, and the activities and the goals of the project appear not to be connected. Those three elements makes it difficult for the evaluators to understand what your project is trying to achieve and how you plan to go about achieving it. And please note that we look for details and specificity, not so much in terms of a specific academic field, as in the operational side, the planning and coherence and feasibility of your project. Furthermore, poor applications often fail to describe if and how the project is complementary to other relevant strategies, projects, and activities, and what added value this particular project brings to the already established or completed projects. And this part is especially relevant for projects with parallel or previous funding from NORPART and or other Diku programs. The application then needs to state very clearly what is new and how it builds on ongoing or completed activities and results. In relation to this, poor applications often fail to give adequate information about the demand and support for the project activities and their outcomes at the partner institution, at the study program level, among students and teachers. Another thing that we often see is that the commitment and mutual interest from the partners is not clear. For instance, many seem to think that NORPART is purely a capacity building program where the relevance and impact of the Norwegian partner institution is irrelevant. If you think like that, please read the program document on call text again. NORPART has as its main aim to enhance the quality of education in Norway and in partner countries. And while that does not mean that the effect and impact should be exactly the same, it means that there should be an effect and an impact both at the Norwegian institution and at the partner institutions. And of course, students' exchange should be bilateral. In relation to this, we often see that the institutional commitment is not clear, and this goes for all the institutions involved. For example, if very few people are involved at the various institutions, it may give the impression that successful implementation and sustainability of the project results are at risk. Running a NORPART project generally isn't and shouldn't be a one-person show at each partner institution. The lack of institutional commitment also creates doubts about how the project results are going to be sustained after the project period ends. And finally, it may be, we have some other tips for you. It may be useful to talk to a project coordinator at your institution who is already running a NORPART project. How will you identify them? You consult Diku's project database where their contact information is available. If there aren't yet any NORPART projects at your institution, you may consider contacting project coordinators who are running projects within related fields of education or with partnerships in the same partner countries. And you can find all this by following the link in the slide here. It's important for me to underline that it is always very useful to involve administrative staff in application writing, or at least involve people who knows a bit about how to develop and use digital teaching materials, and someone who can tell you what it takes to develop structures for credit transfer, recognition of courses and credits taken at one institution at one institution at the partner institution. It's important to involve people who know what it takes for student mobility to be practically feasible. Please don't just assume that these things will work themselves out once the project gets started. These are things that you need to consider while writing the application. And finally, I repeat, please contact Diku if you have questions. And now I've been running through this quite quickly, so I believe that we have time for more questions, if there are questions. And I see that there are quite a few.
Yes, there's a lot of questions. Maybe one of the first ones that came in about the program, if it's covering TVET cooperation and bachelor level.
Unfortunately, NORPART does not cover activities at the bachelor or TVET levels. I think that's what I can say about that. Yeah, it's possible, of course, to have internships and traineeships for students at the master level, but that's not the same.
Yeah, so no scholarships for the students at the bachelor level. Yeah, all right. Yes, we have also, in general, some questions about security situation and the COVID-19 pandemic. A little bit different questions about it. Of course, that is something that concerns the universities when they apply.
Yes, I think I can say this. None of us knows how the COVID-19 pandemic will pan out. I would suggest that you develop a project application that takes into consideration that such things can happen, but that otherwise you pretend that the world will be as normal as possible when your project starts in January next year. If the world isn't as normal as we would like it to be, then we can take that when the project is funded, I think. It's impossible now to be able to sort of say that, oh yes, we think in February 2023, this situation will be like this and this. So I think the best advice would be to say that please pretend that everything will be normal when the project starts. But we have also added the possibility to apply for digital activities in a bigger scale for this application round than we have in the previous years, as Sistel said initially. And part of this is to hopefully help the project to keep running in case of COVID-19 lasting longer than we would like, or in case of other situations arising.
Yeah, and that within that same topic, we have a question here about if we can combine full degree and short-term mobilities in one and the same application. And to that, I guess our answer is that we have a quite flexible approach. So you can add both full degree, short-term, blended mobility, digital components, etc.
In the same application.
In the same application.
Yes.
Yeah. So with that in mind, when we see that the effects of the pandemic may last longer than we first anticipated, then maybe have this in mind when you plan your activities and use the different opportunities that the program allows. Yes. Let me see. There are tons of questions, and I think we'll definitely have to post a summary of these and answer to these on our web page after the webinar anyway. So unless there are some that you would like to take now, Hilde, then maybe we can move on.
Yeah, we can. And then it's my pleasure to give the floor to Alfred Magato, who is a representative from the South African Ministry of Higher Education and Training, who will tell us a little bit more about opportunities for partnerships with institutions in South Africa. Are you ready, Alfred?
I am ready, Hilda.
Thank you. So good to see you. Now I will, yes, I will run the slides for you, so you can just tell me next slide when you're done with this one.
Thank you very
much.
much.
Is that okay? Yep.
Perfect. Good afternoon, colleagues. I'm Alfred Magato, and I'll be representing the Department of Higher Education and Training here in South Africa. It is a privilege and an honor for the country as well as the HDI to form part of or to be invited to NORPART. So thank you very much for that. Next slide, please. Only select universities have been included to partner with NORPART, and the universities that were identified were the historically disadvantaged universities. How did we come about with this historically disadvantaged institution? It came as a result of the past injustices that were there in the system. However, during the 2013 academic year, the Ministry of Higher Education in South Africa commissioned a ministerial committee for the review of funding of universities. The report was produced in October 2013 and therefore identified 8 universities that were classified as historically disadvantaged universities. And the universities are as listed there: University of Fort Hare, University of Limpopo, University of Venda, Walter Sisulu University, University of the Western Cape, University of Zululand, Mangosuthu University of Technology, and Sefako Makhado Health Sciences University. Next slide, please. Due to the historic injustices, HDIs in their nature are not financially well off, as they have not yet generated sufficient reserves to fully sustain themselves. So their funding is highly dependent on state grants and subsidies, which the government provides to these institutions. This necessitated the South African government to establish a special earmark grant to enable the 8 designated universities to receive additional funding for the implementation of their strategic priorities, which are aligned to government policies over and above their normal subsidies which they receive from the government itself. Next slide, please. With the creation of the earmark grant, there's still a need for additional funding to ensure the universities are fully resourced and can compete with their affluent counterparts in South Africa and obviously with the other institutions across the world. This is to ensure that the brain drainage studies experienced by this institution is minimized as much as possible, and to ensure that these universities are able to recruit and retain the high caliber academic staff as well as researchers which are sought after. Colleagues, the HDIs are located in remote areas, in rural setups, and this tends to be a problem because it is difficult for these institutions to attract academics and researchers and to ensure that they retain or remain retained within those institutions. So the issue of localities is an issue that needs to be addressed. But how can we address this particular issue? It's something that is, I will also touch on at a later stage. Next slide, please. The South African government, through the Department of Higher Education and Training, as well as the Department of Science and Innovation, under the Ministry of Higher Education, Science and Innovation, has embarked on a strategy to assist the HDIs in increasing their research capacity through bilateral engagement. This strategy will also enable the HDI to increase their global footprint within the research environment and compete with the best universities in the world, and as well as also partnering with other institutions, whereby the NORPART presented an opportunity, and I think the HDIs will be in a better position to uptake and then honor that partnership and move forward from that particular point of view. Next slide, please. There are a few programs that the government, together with the institutions, have formulated. The first one is the University Capacity Development Grant. This is it's a program which has three sub-programs. The first is at the institutional level. The second is at a university-led collaborative program. And the last one is the nationally led sub-program. So I just provided an indication of where each program or sub-program fits into the bigger picture. Next slide, please. Also, after taking due consideration, there was a need to ensure that we attract the high caliber of staff and researchers. There also needs to be a particular framework that assists the institutions which are aligned to government policies, also to provide additional support to the institution. We therefore came up with the framework, the Staffing South Africa's Universities Framework, which is divided into 6 categories. The first one is Nurturing Emerging Scholars Programs, whereby this is a program that accepts or welcomes students who are in their postgraduate studies. Then we have the New Generation of Academic Program. This one is directed for the students that are doing their doctorate after having completed or successfully completed their masters with proper results. Then we have the third one, which is the Existing Staff Capacity Enhancement. Colleagues, we are not only focusing on attracting new students into the system, but also speaking and addressing some of the capacity constraints that the institutions must be faced with. There are 2 programs under the Staffing Existing Staff Program, speaks to the Staff Doctoral Program, whereby we encourage students who only have masters to attain their doctoral and to also pursue research areas. And we also have the Future Professors Program. This is a program also that is aligned to ensure that the students or the staff members that are currently sitting or having their PhDs are also promoted within the ranks and to ultimately attain their professorships. And the fourth one, we have the Higher Education Leadership Management Program. This one is to ensure that we have good managerial skills, and the program is also to develop high caliber individuals to ensure that they are able to lead and drive the institutions of higher learning into the right desired direction. Hopefully this will add value, not only to the institution, but to the country and the nation and international areas as well. We also have the Staffing South Africa's Development Program. However, this one is the development program, which speaks to the different aspects that I've spoken to under program 1, 2, 3, and 4. And last but not least, is also to ensure that we capacitate the supplementary staff members at the institutions. Obviously, the academics cannot work by themselves. They also need additional assistance. Next slide, please. Staffing South Africa's framework for the HDIs, as well as the other institutions, has widely recognized that South African university system as a whole is currently experiencing severe challenges in relation to the size, composition, capacity of its academic staff, more so for the HDIs. The Staffing South African University Framework is a national and sector response to us addressing some of these challenges which were identified. Next slide, please. The South takes as its starting point the urgent imperative to recruit, support, and retain Black academic staff to address their very serious underrepresentation at all levels in the sector. The HDIs also participate in the program to assist them to produce world-class researchers and academics. SAUF intends to make possible and rapid increase in the number of people likely to enter the academic profession, and is designed to also have a significant systemic effect through its emphasis on multifaceted phase development. Next slide, please. SAUF intends to address two things. One, identify and nurture academic talent early in the academic development trajectory at senior undergraduate level and early postgraduate level. And to also support newly recruited academics to acquire doctoral degrees or master's degrees in selected fields. Develop teaching expertise, develop research skills, including scientific publication skills, provide development opportunities for academic staff and researchers at all levels, and enable the recruitment of supplementary staff to enhance and strengthen teaching and research at universities. This also speaks to some of the purpose or the mission that is embedded in NORPART if you look at the call-out document. So I'm glad that there is a proper direct alignment between what the Staffing South African Universities Framework speaks to, as well as what NORPART speaks to. So this, for future partnership, goes to show that there won't be any cohesions. All the parties will be on the same level and will be able to understand one another, coming from having the same background or the same ideologies at the back of our minds. Next slide, please. We therefore also have a development grant, which is the Hdi Development Grant, which is an EMI grant that the South African government established, which is meant to support the development initiatives for all the 8 HDIs. The funding is allocated for a period of 5 years. The overall purpose of these funds is to put in place systems and mechanisms in place to develop and ensure sustainability of the institution through financial health, safety, security, infrastructure development, first-stream income development, governance, as well as staff and student development. This is also established to enable the universities to strengthen their academic enterprises and fully realize their potential by taking up their sustainable position within differentiated higher education system here in South Africa. Next slide, please. We also have a development program. The development program is called the Sibusiso Bengu Development Program, which is named after the first Minister of Education in South Africa post-apartheid era. So this is the first minister the first person or individual who became the Minister of Education in a democratic South Africa. The development program is to decisively redress the inequalities that have impacted the development and sustainability of the HDIs and to contribute to their further development as strong universities in a diversified system, which are socially embedded and responsive, are highly regarded and valued, including the communities from which their students are drawn, and which produce both graduate and new knowledge that can make a contribution to a socio-economic development in the local, national, regional, and international context in this particular instance. Next slide, please. The development program seeks to work with the high-level priority areas, proceeding from the premise that if these priorities are decisively addressed, multiple secondary and tertiary issues would then also be addressed. It is recognized that there are a range of other cross-cutting imperatives, not specifically described at this point in time, but which cut across the priority areas described and which university is responding to. These include, but not limited to, the following: decolonization of higher education, indigenous language knowledge systems, the fourth industrial revolution and the digitization, blended learning modalities, entrepreneurship development, and environmental sustainability. Also, this speaks to some of the areas of the work that is required within the South African context. If some of these are addressed, then we should be able to put the HDIs on a better footing and to be competitive globally and produce the high level of caliber researchers and academics that we expect to see in the near future. Next slide, please. There are 7 strategic development areas or priorities that are embedded within the development program, and their priorities are as follows: Institutional governance and management. This is to establish or to strengthen and capacitate institutional management and governance structures, systems and processes, including student governance. Because in the whole process, what are the main or our key stakeholders in this instance is our students, so they should not be left behind. So hence they are also included as part of the process. The second one is the institutional infrastructure and facilities, improves teaching infrastructure, research infrastructure, student housing, information and communication technology, digital infrastructure, as well as sports infrastructure, so that we look at the whole student experience. Then it speaks to the next, the third key strategic priority, which is student experience. Enhance students' experience through focus on student life and student success, and through the creation of safe environments, because students' well-being is a high priority for us. The fourth one is staff development and support. As I've indicated previously, these play a crucial role, because once we have willing and dedicated staff members, most of our programs will flourish and will be able to execute whatever mandate that has been given or assigned to the different institutions. So this will enable an effective staff recruitment, retention, and progression. This also includes through improving staff qualification, creating a supportive staff environment, having attractive and reasonable work conditions, and providing effective teaching, research, and professional development. With COVID, there were lots of learning curves, or our learning curve increased substantially, whereby we were forced to rethink of how we do things. And I'm happy that the outcome was that not only are we bound to be office bound, but we're able to work wherever we are. And wherever we work, we have to produce proper results. And if you look at the quality of work that is being produced when we are office bound as compared to working remotely under COVID conditions, there's a significant increase in terms of quality as well. Next slide, please. The fifth strategic priority is academic enterprise. This is important, colleagues. This ensures responsive qualification programs and curricula, as well as streamlined program qualification mix that reflect the university's individual identity and the role it plays or seeks to play in a diversified higher education landscape in South Africa. 6 is research and innovation. Identify and develop research focus areas that characterizes the identity and aspiration of each HDI, and build on innovation and technology transfer capacity to enable research to impact on society, industry, and the economy. Relations and partnership. Once again, this is where NORPART comes in. This is to strengthen and leverage on local, regional, national, and international collaboration and partnership to support the development of the universities, while at the same time contributing to the development of the localities and communities, possibly through adopting the anchor institution approach as a means of aligning with the district development model being advanced by the South African government. I'll speak to the district development model in the next few slides. Next slide, please. How is this development program being currently resourced? The main resource of the Sibuso Bengu development program is the Sibuso Bengu Development Grant. So it is a grant specifically for the program, which takes in the form of an annual EMA grant. As I've indicated, it's a 5 years on a 5-year cycle. The grant will be allocated to university based on the plans that have been approved by the Minister of Education, Science and Innovation. The assumption is that on average, each of the university benefits by an equal amount. This must articulate in an equitable manner, considering the shape and the size of the respective HDIs. The Department of Education and Training will create a suitable capacitated staff implementation within the University Brand Education, which will support the Sibuso Bengu Development Program. Colleagues, currently I'm heading that particular unit, and I'm supported by my 3 awesome team members, Ms. Kolisa Sikoko, Ms. Nakita Mashihu, as well as Ms. Faith Baloi, with ensuring that we drive the whole program and we are able to also achieve and attain some of the key priority strategies that were mentioned earlier on. So we are hoping that within the next 5 years, there will be substantial progress that is being made. Together with the partnership that will also be establishing through NORPART, we also elevate some of the HDIs to a higher status than they are, and we capacitate them as much as possible. Next slide, please. The development program will be implemented in a 5-year cycle, with the first year of the cycle being the 2021-2022 commencing, which will commence the 1st of April next month. Each university will develop a 5-year plan to be approved by the ministers as indicated. The development of the university's plan has to take place within the context of university's defined vision, mission, as well as the mandate, and within a broader university strategic design. This is to ensure that it gives an effective effect to the vision and the mandate, and as well as the mission of the different HDIs. These 3 planning levels will be completely aligned with one another and with the university's strategic plans nested within it for the medium to long-term strategic plan, which in turn is nested within the broader vision of the university's vision, mission, and mandate. Next slide, please. Cabinet recently adopted the district development model, as I've indicated earlier on, which is intended to advise service delivery in order to reach the people. All government planning policies, planning and initiatives are required to be spatially referenced to the local context. This includes the role that the public higher education institutions and all the universities in South Africa, more so the HDI, based on the localities that they are placed in, as I've indicated, will play in resolving number of challenges afflicting society as a whole. In this context, the role of the higher education and the higher education institution is critical, especially the HDI, as I've indicated. Universities and colleges play a central role in educating and training the individual who will drive and determine the social, economic, and industrial base of the future. They also play a critical role in producing knowledge and driving innovation, in solving local challenges and building on local knowledge, so to create new possibilities for the development, which are often linked to the global concerns. Next slide, please. In the case of the HDIs, they must have a local footing and a national and global outlook. This is important so that not to be seen to be conforming or confining their education to matters of local economy. This aspect is clearly stated in the framework. This means that these institutions should think of ways in which they can participate at district level to ensure sustainable and yet remain nationally and global relevant. The Department of Education and Training continuously develops and reflects on policy interventions in support of both specific and broad government priorities. And all the DHET policy framework are intended precisely to contribute to the national development, hence the support provided to the HDI, as we value and appreciate the role that they have to play within the society and the localities that they emanate from. Next slide, please. This brings me to almost the end of my presentation. NORPART's opening statement states, NORPART shall enhance the quality of higher education in Norway and selected partner countries in the Global South through academic cooperation and mutual mobility, student mobility. We look forward to having our HDIs as part of the partnership that will bring about a fruitful and mutual benefit by capacitating the HDI fully and to produce more academic and researchers who will bring about an effective change to this institution. Enhancing the quality of education through cooperation and mutual student mobility, that is key and important. So this opens up a wide range of partnership possibilities, similar to what we recently established as the Department of Education with the other countries. However, we look forward to this long-term partnership, and thank you once more for extending the invite to our 8 HDIs. Next slide, which is my conclusion remarks. Thank you very much for your time.